Should I move to the next slide, Ness? There we go. So just to kind of go over the ground rules for today and tell you what we're going to be doing. We're going to start with some time. We're going to just let you all know we're going to have a Q&A at the end of this. We've left a big chunk of time at the end so we can get to some of your questions, and obviously those are oftentimes the most enlightening parts of the session. So as we go along, please be sure to pop questions into the Q&A section. You should see that. This is a live Teams event. You should see that Q&A section visible on the right-hand side of your screen. Pop those in. We'll be queuing those up, and we'll be punching through as many of those as we can at the end. So let's make this as interactive as we can as we go. Also, just to let you know, we are recording this session. The recording of it will be available to you after the session. We'll send that out to you so you can share it with your colleagues or go back and review any parts that were of particular interest. And then post-webinar, we'll be sharing collateral with you as well. So look for that. And of course, if we don't get to any of your questions, we'll be available to set up times to meet with you individually and go deeper into your particular situation. Maybe you want to bring some of your other team members, into those conversations as well. So for the agenda today, we will be doing some quick introductions, and then we'll do a brief review of how we approach planning for your cloud migration. Just to warn you now, our approach, we'll start out with a little bit of top-down view, but we're going to then, our approach is to really get into the details. In my experience with cloud migrations, it's in those details where these projects get difficult. So we build bottom-up plans, working with the subject matter experts that know the systems that are being migrated, and find those connection points and those integration points and those old libraries, those old third-party tools, etc., that can be the real difficult parts of these migrations, right? And it takes really the people that know those systems to be able to work effectively with a joint team to be able to tease those out in that early planning session and make sure there's time allocated to doing that work. Right. In addition, with a lot of these older systems, some of the documentation maybe hasn't been pulled together on, how to build and deploy, et cetera. Even some of the test case documentation, et cetera, it may not be readily available. So we get involved with the SME teams to pull that out because that's valuable stuff, right? That's the base of what is got to happen during the migration. And we'll be stepping through each of those pieces as we go through here today. And then we'll get into how to, how application development changes, how the approach to cloud app deployment really changes, and the DevOps and automation that needs to go into there, as well as we'll dive into systems monitoring and security and governance. So we're going to cover a lot of ground here today, but then we'll technically with you. And then toward the end, we'll bring back Steve Finney, the ever popular Steve, to give us some of the specifics around some of the AWS case studies that you'll be really interested to hear about, I think. That'll kind of wrap things up as we go into the Q&A. So remember, bring in your questions into the chat as we go, and we'll see if we can address them. So just a little bit about us. I'll tell you a little bit about me as well. Bob Duffy speaking. I'm one of the managing partners in People Tech Group, and we are 2,000 employees strong. And our software may run in the car you drive today, if you drive a GM vehicle, as we build the applications that run in the GM on the center stack, and as well as cluster displays behind the steering wheel. And we engender long-term relationships, with our customers that way. PTG started back in 2006, and with a focus on enterprise software implementations and integrations. And that practice built as we became, prime vendors for Stanford University, Weyerhaeuser, Amazon, As our cloud skills expanded, we began migrating systems to the cloud for our customers and creating cloud-based data lakes and data warehouses for customers like Expedia in the state, preparing them to move to Workday. We help them cleansing their data, their existing data, and making sure that we migrated their existing reporting and BI to this new data warehouse, so that that reporting would all continue to work as they migrated to Workday, right? Because then, as part of the Workday implementation, we piped that data into Workday and reconnected so that all of that reporting and BI continued to work smoothly, through the transition. We manage their data warehouse and their BI reporting to this day. Along the way, on our journey, we've made a few key acquisitions. The Ramp Group, which specializes in user interface and user experience design. CodeSmart, based right down there in Olympia, which focuses on government customers. And Fyrsoft, that specializes in infrastructure and data center optimization. So those are the guys that put the systems platforms together and implement security. So these added skill sets, have expanded our ability to assist our customers and take their improvement ideas from idea all the way through to the implementation. Yeah, so big picture, as I mentioned, we've got about 2,000 employees, and we as I mentioned earlier, we tend to what our real secret to success is developing long-term relationships, and I think it's some of our values that do that. Our commitment to our customers, our commitment to always getting the job done, is what we really focus on and what we build, and that commitment shows very much in our client relationships. So, for instance, Stanford and Weyerhaeuser have now been customers of ours for more than a dozen years, and we continue to work with them. Amazon and Microsoft for over a decade. Our strongest presence in the state is at ESD, working on the PFML, it's a mouthful, project, as well as other key projects. But we also work at DOL, the Washington State Investment Board, SBC2C, OSPI, and others. So without further ado, let's get started with an introduction to today's speakers. Oh, let's talk agenda quickly. Let me pop back to that. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we're going to go deeply into our cloud migration process, and that's going to be where we talk about how we really get into looking at the integrations between the applications that you have, so that we can identify the appropriate move groups that need to go, the things that are related to each other. We're going to have some of our experts really get in and talk about how the application development process changes, and a lot of that has to do with DevOps and how, as part of the migration to the cloud, the key role that DevOps plays as we get the automation going that allows you to develop your code, check it in, and have it push straight out to the cloud. We'll also be getting involved in cloud app deployment process, as well as the CI/CD process, and get into systems monitoring and maintenance and testing. We'll talk about testing a bit as well, and finally get into systems security and governance. All right, introductions for today. We've got a great panel of speakers today. Starting out with the senior solutions architect from AWS State and Local Group, Jaideep Das. We'll also be hearing from Jegadesh Sankar. He's our Director of Cloud and Infrastructure, and really focuses in working with the state agencies. And we brought in Abdel, Abou Fariss. He's our Senior Cloud Architect. So it's these kind of experts that are added to the project teams to kind of bring in those specialty cloud services and wrap around your team and your SMEs that really know the systems involved and the status of those systems. So let's hand it over to you, Jegadesh.
All right. Again, thank you very much, Bob, and thanks everyone for joining this webinar. I understand your time is precious. I really appreciate you joining this webinar. So let's go ahead and get started. My name is Jegadesh. I've been with People Tech. I come from the Fyrsoft family. I've been with the company for almost 8 years and 15 years in the industry. And my primary goal is to help customers move to cloud and embrace cloud. So that's what I've been doing. As part of that, I've helped several customers move to cloud in terms of migrating their core infrastructure. And I also worked on engagements to help customer modernize their application environment. So having said that, let's start with planning the cloud journey. All right. So we understand journey to cloud is a fundamental exercise, and every organization is in some parts of this journey. And I'm sure your organization has done some prep work already, or you're already on the path of migrating to cloud. But let's set the baseline because we got a mixed audience. So let's start with the baseline, and then we'll get a little bit more deeper as we progress through the slides. The first stage, always it starts with an assessment exercise. This is where we would help customers understand what's their business priority on why they wanted to move to cloud. There are specific reasons on why companies want to move to cloud. The priorities could be they just wanted to have the flexibility of scale in and scale out. They wanted to have a more modern architecture built on the cloud. So it could be of variety of reasons. So understanding the business priority and mapping that is a critical exercise, and that's where we would recommend our customers start their transformational journey. And once they understand the business priorities, the key here is to understand the people readiness, to look at the team around and see, okay, where we are, how do we get the team ready, and ensure that the team can work towards migrating their applications to cloud. And again, when we talk about journey to cloud, it's not that, okay, there's a whole new team that's going to come and do the work. The key here is the existing team, who understands their applications, their environment, their processes better. So it's key that the existing team is fully prepared and ready to embrace cloud and start moving to cloud. And once we do the people readiness assessment, then next comes the technology mapping and readiness. So this is where you would look at your existing technology stack in terms of what's there currently on-premises and what's the technology that you wanted to move to on the cloud. It could be just a one-to-one mapping where you just move your existing technology to the cloud, or you can look at in terms of modernizing some of your technology landscape. So that's an option available, and that's something which comes after the people readiness. Now, once we are done with that exercise, so then comes a quick look at the inventory of existing applications, reviewing the application roadmaps, and see what is the future state of each of these applications, and then trying to map the journey to cloud exercise in line with the application's roadmap. So that's something which we would recommend. And once we have the roadmap and future state defined for applications, the next stage is to look at the dependencies for those applications, and then understanding the current deployment process and readiness, and putting together a holistic plan. So that's pretty much what we do on the assessment stage. We do a fundamental exercise. We look at the business priorities, readiness, technology mapping, roadmap for applications, map dependencies, and then we move on to a strategy exercise. So as part of the previous stage, we would have already understood the end goal. Now the end goal is more defined and more realistic because it's not just an end goal which is coming from top down. The end goal is now reviewed with the readiness of the team and the organizational readiness. So now we have a more defined end goal. And now this is where we would look at and say, okay, what are my migration strategies? What my options are? Am I going to look at modernizing most of my applications? What is the priority of my migration order? Let's say we have about 5 business applications. What should go first in terms of the criticality and priority of those applications? And then we'll also look at opportunities for re-architecting some of those applications which might have a longer roadmap. right? So this is where you would identify all those applications, and you also identify some applications which you might just want to move to cloud rather than spending a lot of time in re-architecting the whole solution. So that comes the migration strategy on what applications are going to be a lift and shift approach and what needs to be modernized. Now let's spend a few minutes to talk about the migration options and what each of those options mean, and then we'll get into the details on what could be a best scenario for a specific application category. Now, understanding migration options. Now, we all know in our on-premises world, there is an infrastructure stack and there's an environment stack, and we also got an architectural stack and the application which sits on top of it. After the assessment, this is the stage where we would map each of these applications to migration approach. Certain applications could be just a rehost, which is basically moving your on-prem infrastructure directly to the cloud. So that's like looking at your existing VM, taking the VM and moving a VM migration to the cloud. So that's an rehost approach. Honestly, in this approach, you don't get a lot of benefits that comes natively as part of cloud, but still this is something like a quick win strategy. If you have an application where you really wanted to move to cloud quickly and make sure you don't have the on-prem dependency, and that could be because of your data center hardware issues or hardware going out of warranty. We have seen some customers take this approach where they quickly move their on-prem applications to cloud in a rehost approach. So that's something which we have seen. This also provides scaling opportunities for customers, because now once you go to cloud, you have opportunities to scale up and down pretty quickly. The next option that we have here is the re-platform. So in re-platform, what you do is you take a look at your existing applications, and instead of going through and changing the full architecture of it, you just take a small piece of it and then re-platform it to the cloud. To just give an example, let's say if you have a database running on-prem, you just try to look at that and move that to a managed database. You still get benefits of cloud. This is in between a rehost and a re-architectural approach. So you get a partial benefit of moving to cloud, where you have a managed DB. You're not putting in terms of a lot of time to manage the underlying engine of the database, but you would still do the management on the database layer. So that comes on the re-platform approach. So again, in terms of effort, there is minimal efforts involved here, but you could still get advantages in the cloud. The third approach is a refactor or a re-architectural approach. So we see our customers who has a longer roadmap for their applications. They really look at refactoring on re-architecting applications on the cloud to build cloud native applications. So this takes some time and a focused approach. And if you have an application which has a roadmap of continuous updates, we recommend our customers to re-architect those applications on the cloud. The last option is where you may want to consider re-looking at your existing applications and see, do I still need this application when I move to cloud, or is there an opportunity to replace that with an existing or an application which could be built on cloud native, and is that something which we can directly purchase from a third-party ISV? So that's the last option. We still see some of the customers take advantage of this as well. Instead of going through refactoring or re-architecting applications on the cloud, they could probably purchase an app which is built directly on the cloud and just pay the subscription cost. So these are some of those options, and there's not, we would say, okay, one way is the best method to do it. It really depends on what application that you currently have on-prem, the roadmap for those applications, your business priorities, strategies, your team readiness, and your timelines. You could choose one of these migration options, and that's something which we will do in detail, understanding each customer and what they are currently in terms of technology stack and their business goals. Let's move to next slide. Now let's look at what a modernization looks like. We touched on this a little bit in the previous slide, but in rehost approach, you have both your Windows applications and SQL database, which directly moves to and VM on the cloud. and the SQL is directly moved to a VM on the cloud as well. So this is as good as a VM running on the cloud, but not on your on-prem. And the good part is with AWS, even if you have a VMware estate, you could even run your whole VMware fully managed service delivery stack on the cloud hosted on AWS's hardware. So that's an option which is available. We have seen some customers move their entire data center to cloud, where they are on a VMware shop, they just move it quickly, and they are on cloud, and then they can look at opportunities to re-platform. So in re-platform approach, that's where customers see opportunities to containerize their applications, and then move to a managed database. So that's from moving from a hypervisor, which sits on a VMware, to containers, and you can now build containerized applications and take advantage of those stacks as well. Now, on the refactor approach, that's when, as we discussed earlier, you would go through a full architecture transformation. You move something like from .NET to a .NET Core. We also look at migrating from a database to a managed database, which is more like a SQL migration to Aurora and DynamoDB. We'll look at a little bit more in detail as we go through. My colleague Abdel will come and talk about what are the options on the modernizing applications. So at this stage, we have really done the assessment. We looked at the organizational strategy. We understood the migration options, and we also have a good understanding on what an application modernization looks like. Now, what's next, right? So the next step is to create a foundation in the cloud. So that's something called a landing zone. We'll talk about landing zone in the next slide, but we create a landing zone, and then we migrate the application. And once the app goes to the cloud, we kind of operate and optimize in the cloud. So I'll probably just take a quick break here to see if there's any specific questions, Nancy.
Let me check. Jegadesh, are you able to see the question in the Q&A?
Yes. There's a question which talks about,
are the developments IaaS or SaaS?
Hold on 1 second there. OK, yes. There's a question which talks about, are these deployments IaaS or SaaS? So I think that really depends on your migration approach. It could be IaaS or it could be a SaaS-based applications. But when we talk about migrating your on-prem app to cloud, it would be infrastructure as a service. And that's where people would start. And if you wanted to modernize, so that's where we would look at opportunities to run as a platform as a service. So it's a combination of both IaaS and PaaS is what we have seen customers move from on-prem to cloud. SaaS comes in specific cases where people want to use the cloud native applications. I'm sure in Washington State, they're considering moving to a Workday application. So that's a SaaS-based model. But that comes on the ERP side. But for most of your on-prem applications, an IaaS versus PaaS approach is what we have seen for multiple customers.
Also, there's
let's move on.
There's one more question, Jegadesh, for in terms of managed services. For example, databases. Does a service provide DBA support, or would we still have to have our own DBAs?
May I answer that question, please?
Of course.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. As far as the database DBA support, yes, I've been in that situation, and then yes, you do have option to manage your database because there are two options when we deploy database to the cloud. You can install database on EC2 server, so you have your EC2 or VM that you can maintain yourself. Basically, when I say that, that means you maintain the OS underlying infrastructure, and you can patch, basically for security patching, all that good stuff, as well as database. So you can maintain, you can have full control of database as well as EC2 instance as well. The other option it's the AWS offers is RDS. RDS is basically you still have access to database. You can still support it as a DBA. However, the underlying infrastructure is maintained for you. In other words, you don't need to apply any patches. You don't need to do any security. I mean, everything is done by AWS for you. So they gave these two options to clients. So it is up to the client to choose whether they want to use RDS technology, or if you want to have control of the database as well as the server, you have that option as well.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Thanks, Abdel. So I think
Sure.
that's one of the flexibility that cloud provides by native. So you do have multiple options. Either if you wanted to have a fully managed database, you can still have option to manage it yourself, or you can have a partial managed where the engine side of things is managed by AWS, and your database team can focus on making sure they work on the database layer, not the underlying engine. So that's something which you will get as part of moving to cloud. Now let's move on and talk about landing zone real quick. So landing zone is the foundation that you'll be building on the cloud. So once you are done with all the readiness and you wanted to move to cloud, the first is to build a landing zone. So that's where you would run a specific scripts that AWS provides. And what it does is it creates an environment for you on the cloud. It identifies accounts and the permissions and roles that needs to be created, the networks that needs to be created, and all this is created by default. And when you create the landing zone, so that gives you a quick way to jumpstart and start moving to cloud. So this is the foundation. Let's move to the next slide, Nancy. All right. So this is the kind of an underlying architecture that gets created when you create a landing zone. So basically, you would get all your accounts created, your network, and I'm sure there is role-based access which needs to be created for different teams within your organization. So all these accounts are created by default. So this is a quick way of creating your cloud foundation. So you're not spending a lot of time in kind of creating all this manually. All this is an automated process. And this also provides an option for you to customize and create landing zone, which would meet your specific requirements as well. So that's where we would start and create a landing zone. Now, let's move on to and take a quick poll to understand our audience, and then I will have Bob come in and look at the results, and then we will talk through how each of you will come in different work streams and what's their role in migrating to cloud. So Nancy, do you want to publish the poll real quick?
Yep. If everyone can look into the chat, you'll see the link. If you click on the link, you'll be able to take a quick poll, and then we'll publish the results shortly.
Yeah, let's go to the response section, Nancy. You already got 14
Okay.
response.
Yep, let me
Excellent.
share that. So go ahead, Bob. You can take a look at this.
Yeah, just looking at it closely, quickly here. We've got pretty good representation out of the infrastructure team so far. I'm sure there'll be more results coming in as well. We can share the update of those, as well as development. So that's great. I think we've got, it helps us kind of calibrate some of the topics coming up. And then, we're kind of really 50-50 on the primary role. So I think we do cover both of those topics. And then, in terms of how deep they want to go, it's hard for me to tell those colors. What do we got? What's our big one?
So the
kind of
purple
the other,
is other.
Yeah.
Blue is overview of the tools. Red is
well, we've got good representation out of both high level and deep. So that helps. Yeah, why don't we pop to the next slide? As these keep coming in, I'll talk about what these really mean. No, go to let's see. I want to see the migration slide. Next one, yeah.
There you go, Bob.
Right. So this slide covers a lot of ground, and we just one of the first poll questions we had there is which of these main teams on the left-hand side do you most identify with? Now, a lot of people wear multiple hats these days, so that's fine. but this kind of shows you how we look at the world when we break down a cloud migration. The infrastructure group, development team, the testing team, build and release is a special focus because there's a chunk of new work to be done there, and then project management, of course. So for instance, when you look across then each of these teams, when we break out a project plan, we break this into work streams. And each work stream then has a sub-team of the project associated with it, right? So on the infrastructure side, right, that sub-team work is initially, capturing the as-is environment details, and then importantly, designing that to-be environment where we map out the new architecture, we're mapping the applications to the servers, we're initial sizing of those environments, et cetera, right? Then next we tap into the scripts that are used to create the environments, right? And those scripts are really the power of the cloud, right? Where you start being able to just spin up and create environments with the push of a button, right? And those first environments or those test environments that we start spinning up, development and test environments, right? And then we can start validating those migrated applications into those environments, right? At the same time, that team starts focusing on finalizing the production environment by looking at things like the load test results, tuning the test results, right? As well as implementing the monitoring and management tools so that we can really instrument that environment and take a look at what's really going on inside that environment, right? Then similarly, the development team is on a separate stream, right? There's dependencies between these teams, but these are different focused audience, right? And the development stream starts with those application inventories and really the dependencies in them, right? We can do static code analysis on the existing code base. There's tools we use for that, as well as plan then any code changes that are necessary. Right, libraries changing, third-party tools changing, any tweaks needed in the application layer, right, that the development team needs to handle. Then we can get those modifications made, migrated, and start doing dynamic code analysis on those applications actually running in the target environment, right? Identifying issues and debugging those issues, and then finally tuning, for optimal performance. Similarly, like the testing stream starts with just getting the hands on the existing test tools and test cases that are there, right? And then developing any new test cases that might be needed, because you might have, some older areas of the application that haven't changed in some time, and you might not have full test coverage of all of those pieces. So we've got to identify those gaps and plan the effort for filling those gaps, right? Because at the end we want a full regression test suite that really kicks in every bit of the system and application, right? And that we can validate before we're going to feel comfortable going live into production, right? And part of this process too, on the test side, we might want to look at test automation. Particularly as we get, the DevOps automation going, and we can build and deploy these applications at a touch of a button. We want to build some automation, ideally, that at least does a smoke test of the major functions in the system on an automated basis. So we always know that we're good. We're at least able to handle the main transactions. How far you want to go into test automation is really a business call, but we highly recommend thinking about planning in at least a bit of it. And then the stream on build and release. This is essentially the DevOps stream, right? A lot of new work to be done here, right? Taking your current builds and release procedures and essentially scripting them out, right? So that they can be run at any time, right? To this is the full CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous development kind of work stream. This is one of the key things that makes the life of the developer so much easier, right? They can create changes that are needed in code. They can build and deploy things quickly, and they can have them retested. And lastly, of course, the PM job. The PM stream has a pretty big job, honestly, of pulling all the plans together, making sure they're communicated across the streams, and that everyone's on the same page, and that they're working together, because these teams interrelate over a number of different situations, right? And that the major issues are being worked by the right people to get the project completed. So this slide kind of encapsulates what it looks like as the project is ongoing and these various work streams are working together to get the deployment done successfully. Now we'll go back to Jegadesh. You want to go to the next slide? There you go, Jegadesh. Take it from here.
All right, thanks, Bob. So we just wanted to kind of take a quick look at where you are in terms of the roles, and we want to set a stage. So the next section is where we wanted to deep dive and talk about application deployment, how application deployment changes, deep dive onto DevOps, testing. So I have my colleague Abdel kind of walk through those. Abdel, you want to take it over from here?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Jegadesh. Yes, if you could you go to next slide, please? Okay, so yeah, my name is Abdel Fariss. Just a quick intro. I've been in IT for about 20 years, and I've worked with AWS Cloud for about 6 years. One of my main project that I've had an opportunity to work with is I call it the data center transformation. So I come in, I help the team how and best way to migrate on-prem environment to AWS, including databases, application, network security, all that good stuff. And we put it into a design, our architecture flow, put a roadmap together, assess the pros and cons, and then we execute from there, making sure that we're taking a right approach in order to make the migration successful. So back to the slide here. A modern application here, it's basically from the modern application standpoint, is basically how we can leverage the cloud technology to make some of the legacy application more efficient. That basically that's we take. We leverage all that technology, the modern technology that AWS and Cloud provide us, and we use it in order to make application more efficient. It is basically it's an architecture foundation in the cloud that provides a platform for more flexible and agile software development, provide the organization the ability to plan quickly and address any changes to make the for any changes for business needs, in order to innovate faster and reduce risks. I'll give you an example. From the diagram we see here, some of you might not be familiar with some of the services here, but let's say we have we have an e-commerce website, right? At times, I've seen some clients that they have some promotions, all right? Sometimes that promotion and during a day or 2 days during the week, they get so busy. So basically, the point is the traffic can spike from 1,000 hits maybe to 1 million hits during that promotion. So what we do? So we need to be able to scale in appropriately while the traffic is up. We should have a way to scale without any downtime. So one of the solutions is we use two services: load balancer that balances traffic, and the other service is a cloud. It's a service that's auto scaling. So basically, auto scaling, it does, you set it up to let's say to a minimum 2 servers. And if the CPU, for instance, goes to 90%, then it will trigger a 3rd server. So and now you have more resources to manage the traffic appropriately. And a nice thing about this can be done while people are sleeping, because in a different time zone, somebody is using the site somewhere else with a different time zone. Let's say their time is 3 p.m. and our time is 2 a.m. Some our admin people are sleeping, so the auto scaling will do that job for me. It will spin up a second or third server to add more resources while other people are checking, really visiting the site, and this way we can maintain a high level performance for the website to minimize any downtime. Let's see the other item. So basically what we see here, so we can leverage some of the some of these services such as containers using Docker. We can use some of the other cloud native services, like for instance the one we see here, that's Fargate or Aurora. So basically this Fargate, they are serverless. So what I mean by that, it's basically we maintain our application, and we focus more on the code. However, the underlying infrastructure is maintained by AWS. So it cut down a lot of overhead for us. This way, my team, the dev team, they can really focus on the application, how to make it efficient and work better. Next slide, please. So here are microservices. Microservices, again, here we see compute, which is basically VMs, and we call them in AWS EC2 instances, storage, which we have EBS, which is elastic volume, which it grows with your the storage grows, and if the data grows, the storage grows with it. And if it's you have less storage, then the storage is scaled back. That's really nice. This way you don't get charged for a storage that's sitting there and that you're not using, then you're not taking advantage of the storage if there's no data. So why should I get a bill for that? So the storage will scale back, and this way you don't get you minimize the cost. Same thing with network. They have what is called VPC. It's basically the virtual data center on a network. This is on AWS, which is secured, and it's maintained by AWS for you. Again, databases, we have a lot of flavor of databases that you can use basically on the fly. It's called RDS. RDS is it's a self-managed database, and it gives the client option, let's say using MySQL or using Postgres or using SQL Server or even NoSQL like MongoDB or DynamoDB. RDS it gives you all the options to use any flavor of that database that you're using currently, and you don't need to do any conversion or any type like that. They have all these databases, open source database out there, and it's up to you. And if let's say using today MySQL on data center, you can use MySQL as well. However, AWS will give you RDS technology, which means it will manage the underlying infrastructure for you. So DBAs can only focus on the data, and the underlying infrastructure, you don't need to do anything because they maintain the security. And the other feature that I really like about it, because I was a DBA a long time ago, is the database, how it scales and the storage. So they integrate auto scaling behind RDS. So it gives me as a DBA, if a storage, if storage gets, let's say, to 90%. I'm sorry, if the database gets really full, it's growing, and the storage grows to 90%, I don't have to have a call to a system admin, can you please add storage? I don't need to do that anymore. The storage will scale automatically as the database grows. I found that extremely, extremely helpful, because I remember I used to get a call like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, the database is down. But as a DBA, I look at the logs, database technically is not down. However, the storage is full, so somebody has to add storage. So long story short, we don't need to do that anymore. We focus on the database, we focus on the business and how to make a better tune the database and focus on business needs rather than focusing on the underlying infrastructure. Next slide, please. So here, the application development. Yeah. So this is we have what we call DevOps. DevOps is basically it's combination of the word basically DevOps is a combination of development and operations. Traditionally, we used to have a dedicated team mainly for development to build applications, and another team to run and maintain applications. However, today that barrier between these two teams is basically no longer exists. You know, both teams they can collaborate and interact with each other in order to successfully deploy a critical application to production. And this way, all the teams are aware of the requirement of infrastructure. So there is no point of finger pointing or who did it, because we work as a team, whether the developers, whether the operation, we all work from ground up. Everybody is aware of the application. Everybody's aware of during development stage. Everybody is aware of what we are as far as infrastructure, whether we have a one server or two, or as far as security, everybody is in the same page, which is, I found that very, very productive. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is again back to my point here. So we're basically we're bridging the gap between the teams. This is where CI/CD, which stands for continuous integration and continuous delivery. This is where it really plays a big role. Let me give you an example here. So let's say we got a request from a customer to add a new feature to their application, right? So a DevOps teams they get this request and to add that new feature to the application. So the using the continuous CI/CD pipeline, this will enable them to release to apply that feature, deploy it, and in a matter, you know, it's a matter of days rather than weeks, because we already built the pipeline up front, and the DevOps team they're familiar with the process. So once we get a request, all we have to do just apply it. Then deploy it. And sometimes what I see clients, what they do, they have two environments. They deploy it to test environment and they validate it. Once everything is, they get a green light, then they promote it from test to production. So this is another really a benefit of cloud, because you can have more than another environment. You can have devs, test, stage, and production. So we have other staging or sandbox or whatever we want to call them to give really the team a way of deploying and testing the product before they get promoted to production. So basically, in short, now we have a DevOps engineers. They do everything behind the scene to ensure that everything works during and after deployment. So they are all responsible for the deployment process, monitoring, scaling. They all work as one team. Next slide, please. Infrastructure as a code. This is one of my favorite topic here because that's something that I've done quite a lot, and I see a lot of clients are embracing basically automation. A common use case here is like when you're managing servers. I've seen some projects where it gets very overwhelming. I'll give you an example. Let's say you receive a critical OS patch that we need to apply to our environment, right? And that patch and an environment can have 10 servers, can have 100. I've seen even 1,000. You know, that can have that many servers. So imagine we have a critical OS update that it's really potentially can create some security holes there. So, but we have 100 servers, right? So is it feasible? Are we gonna go and apply this patch on each single service manually? it might be doable, but it's going to take a long time. That long time is very critical because we want to apply that patch, because if 1 week take us to apply a patch, then during that week a potential security hole or somebody can do damage to our system. It's potentially can something happen. Sorry about that. So what we do instead, we use some of the tools to leverage and do automation to automate the process. There's a tool that's a service that AWS uses called AWS SSM, which stands for a system manager. We can use this service to basically, let's say we have an OS patch, we can push the patch to 100 servers or 1,000 servers. You can scale it. Matter of fact, this is another feature. You can scale it during the weekend and let the patch go through all the services. You come back Monday, you got all the servers up and running, already patched, and we're good to go. The other tool that I use too, it's called Ansible. Which is another great automation tool that you use for configuration. We can use that. So we have options. We can use Ansible. We can use AWS native tools, SSM. So the point I'm trying to make is we have automation. We should leverage that to make patches applied rather quickly, to make sure that our environment is secured from ground up. So yeah, could you next slide, please?
Yes, I did want to call out. There's a question
that
sure. Does AWS use the Cloud Foundry framework?
Cloud Foundry framework. That I'm not. I can't speak that because I'm not familiar to it. I've heard of the name, but I'm not sure if AWS used that. So I have to look into that. Okay, the quick answer, what I've seen beside, other third-party vendors, they do integrate with AWS. That I know. I've seen other tools that you can use some type of APIs, and AWS provide APIs to integrate really well with any other third-party vendors.
And this would also be a good time to ask if anyone else has any additional questions.
Sure.
And I believe we provided a link for more information on the AWS Cloud Foundry as well. So
okay, perfect. Thank
okay.
you.
And
yeah. So basically, I can proceed. We're good.
Of course.
Okay, thank you. So basically here again, some of the Java practices we see here, continuous integration, which I talked briefly a while ago, continuous delivery, infrastructure as a code, monitoring, which I'm going to be talking in the next slide, monitoring, logging, and you build the code, you write the code, you build, test, deploy, provision, then monitor. All this is already provided to you by the cloud. AWS Cloud is already there. The tools are already there. Actually, one of the good examples is right here, which is at AWS Elastic. Let's see, Elastic Beanstalk. This is another great service that I've actually seen implemented in some of the clients. What this tool does, basically, as a developer, he or she, all he needs just to focus in writing the code. That's it. Once you're ready to deploy, you use AWS Elastic Beanstalk. Elastic Beanstalk will take it from there. Basically, it will build the VMs for you. It will put load balancers for you. It will even put auto scaling for you. And it really, the underlying infrastructure, with something we used to do traditionally, all that takes a lot of time, a lot of resources, and you have to monitor it. And to put all that together, it's very time consuming. Today, using a tool such as Elastic Beanstalk, you don't need to do that. You have a code, let's say you're building a website, you push the website using Elastic Beanstalk will do everything for you. It's really another good serverless, which automates almost 50-60% of your work for you, which I found that very productive. And this way, our team can focus on more doing other more important things for the business. Next slide, please. Continuous, again, the same thing, continuous integration and delivery. Here we see, this is one of the, we have AWS code commit, which is a Git. Basically, it's a Git technology. I'm sure you have heard of GitHub, GitLab, or any other Git technology. AWS, however, they have their own Git too, which is called AWS code commit. It's just a Git. I mean, you can push the code there, sits there, very secured, and you can use the code to use another server, which is another code pipeline. And a code pipeline uses code build to you can connect code build with a code commit because you need the code. So you get the code from code commit, you do your work, you do your logic, and once you're ready, then you trigger a code deploy. So code deploy, it pushes your code to production. So this is really a nice CI/CD pipeline. You go from the Git, from your repo, you do your build, and you do your deploy, basically in a matter of hours, not weeks. Where traditionally we used to do, you have to deploy application. It's very time consuming. So cloud is giving us the tools so we can leverage that with within our development and get things rather deployed quickly. Next slide, please. Yeah, sure. Yeah, it matters. Why it matters? Yes, it matters a lot, and the reason is one of the reason that I stated a while ago. Getting a product in the market rather quickly. It's more reliable. Again, using automation, one of the great features, because once you build, let's say, call it playbook or script or kind of template, once it's done, you test it, you validate it, then it can be used over and over and over because it worked for us once. It should work next time. So we use automation to sometimes it helps to. I've seen some project that takes weeks and weeks, and we can cut down just implementation from weeks to a matter of days. So it's very, very useful. And the other benefit is a team collaboration. That I can't stress enough how great it is to have the team collaborate, because at the end of the day is what we did as a team to deploy application successfully, which is good for us and for the business. Next slide, please. Yes, here again, it's some of the DevOps tools, which, the one thing that I may, if you notice here, we have traditional, we have we use like a Visual Studio. This is a very popular editor. I know a lot of developers use Visual Studio. The point I'm trying to make here, if you are using Visual Studio today, you can still use it. So it's not like we're going to cloud and oh my God, now I have to put away everything that I've done traditionally. Now I need to learn. I need to the learning curve. All that. A lot of people get afraid of that, but that's not the case. Cloud, what it does, it expands your deployment. It gives you more tools to enhance and make your work better. That's what I'd like to the team to understand. It's not taking away your job or taking now you have to learn new technology. Yes, you do need to learn new services, but it's enhance what you're doing currently and to take that to another level. So basically, let's say if we're looking at the code repository, if you're using GitHub today, you can still integrate GitHub with AWS Cloud. If using, let's say, GitLab or any other Git technology, you can still use it. AWS provide APIs to integrate your GitHub, whatever Git you're using, with AWS. So you're really not getting stuck or like, well, now I have to learn new technology and it's gonna take me time. No, they're really the way they approach DevOps. I found that very, very productive. The other one is let's see, the application deployment testing. So same thing here. We use within a GitHub or even with using a pipeline, the code deploy. So it is up to you. Which CI/CD pipeline would you like to choose? If you want to use the traditional one using GitHub or GitLab, that's fine. AWS will still give you the API to integrate that with AWS resources. If you want to use AWS native CI/CD pipeline, you can use the code deploy. So you have options, to choose from, and what's the best to fit your business needs, and what's it's easy for you. You can pick the options and the services that you like to use for your implementation. Next slide, please. And yes, and this is another, again, the same thing here. Testing is very, very crucial, and basically, your testing it's a facilitate, and it's a very effective process in getting your product to the market rather quickly. So you're using the continuous delivering and your to ensure ongoing flow of new features or whatever the fix you're doing. So that basically can be done in matter of hours rather than weeks. So basically, continuous integration is a practice that's basically involves developers making small changes and checks to their code. And they can check their requirement, and it involves some steps, and then the process can be automated. And then to build that package and your application to be ready for deployment. The continuous delivery, however, it automates it's automated delivery for completed the code to environment, such as let's see, you can deploy to development. And then later, once you test it and validate it, then you can promote it to production. So the continuous delivery gives you that option to do that. Next slide, please. Yeah, so basically this is another benefit. Basically, we test automation. Basically gives us it's a fast to test the outcome. It's consistent. If we deploy it the first time, it should work second time. And the other thing that I've seen, another thing I've seen with the clients, because sometimes you build not only you put together your you develop your application, but you want to make sure it's secured. And then once you apply that security, and the next time you're going to deploy another project, so you're going to be using the same security. And why? Because that security that you applied initially, it worked well. So when you have the automation template, we already know this template has the right security guardrails. It works well. It has whatever the automation you choose. It's basically it avoids a redundant work. If it works, I can literally take that template, copy it to something else, and I can use a second template, and I can do some minor modification and be able to deploy it. It really makes the deployment and building application rather faster. Next slide, please. System monitor. Yeah. So here this is it is a great tool that again AWS Cloud provide us out of the box. This is absolutely, there's no coding, no configuration whatsoever. Once you spin up an EC2 instance or database, there's a button. It says, would you like to integrate CloudWatch with your server? You say yes, and that's it, and you forget about it. And then what CloudWatch does for you, it really generate metrics for you. Let's say you want to know my server why it's spiking 90%. It should be average 50-60%. So you can set up alerts to send you an email or text, or if you have a team or a channel in your team, and this way, if you miss the alert, somebody in your team can see it. And if it goes to 95%, you get a quick alert, and this way, one of members in the team can take action. So I found that very helpful, because this way it makes the team more proactive. So it helps me as a team member to make sure that I avoid a problem before it becomes a problem. That's why that alerts, it's very helpful to our team. The other one is CloudTrail. CloudTrail is actually, this is more for security. It's basically it scans continuously around your environment, and if it sees like unauthorized API, guess what? The team will get alert right away. So this is out of the tools that I really found extremely helpful, because imagine if you have a very large enterprise cloud account. Maybe you have a 500 EC2 servers, right, that you have. And what happened? I mean, for us or for somebody to manually go and inspect each server or each resource, it's almost impossible. It's very time consuming. However, CloudTrail, it inspects all your resources, whether we're talking EC2 servers, whether databases, whatever the case may, it inspects that continuously. And if somebody tried to hack to our system, we get an alert right away, and then we'll take action. Next slide, please. Demo. Do we? How? I was trying to go fast, and I'm not sure if do we have time for a quick demo?
Yeah, I think we have a quick time to do a demo.
Perfect.
Can you share on your screen?
Sure.
Might be a good time for everybody to stand up and shake their hands a little bit. We've been going at this for a little over an hour now. Absolutely.
We could take a 5-minute break if everyone would like, and we can resume at 12:20.
Let's keep rolling.
Okay.
Okay, just for time purposes, let's keep rolling. But if you are at your desk, stand up, raise your arms, watch the demo, and we'll keep on rolling. Thanks. Abdel, you can't stand up. You got to keep pushing buttons.
Sure. I'm actually trying to get the demo ready. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I have, and then this is my account. Can you see my AWS account?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So let me give you. We good?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Let me maximize it and make it bigger. How about that? Okay. So the purpose of this demo is to show you. It's basically to show you how we can automate resources and provision resource on the fly. The resource can be an EC2 instance, can be database, could be autoscaler, could be a load balancer, whatever the resource we try to provision, it can be automated. Okay, so what I'm using, I mean, the thing is, I'm not going to put emphasis on the tool. This is a tool that's called a Red Hat Ansible Tower. It's just a tool that I've been using a lot, but we can use any other tools, because the goal of this demo is how we can provision resources in a matter of minutes rather than weeks. Okay, so I want to show you here. Right now, I only have one server running. It says here, which is my tower, Ansible Tower, because I need this Ansible Tower up and running in order because this is what I'm calling my UI, in order for my UI dashboard to run to provision the resource. So the only resource here, the only server he's running is, so I have everything else stops. So the reason I'm making note of this, because in a minute you're going to see an EC2 is going to get provisioned once I trigger the job. So let's go to the let's see here and log in. Quickly here, I mean, this is a dashboard that gives you everything, not just myself. This is the really nice feature about this. all the team can log in here. I can see dashboards. Like for instance, I can hover. I can see activities, who's doing what. I can see if something I run successfully. So you see that success, or this one is fail. I can see it right away. If I click, I'll drill down. But I just want to give you a quick high level. So now let's go back, and I'm gonna run my job. I have a few jobs here that I've used here as POCs. The one that I'd like to use for demo is, let's see, I believe it's this one. Yeah, that's the one. So basically here, this job can be set up upfront. I mean, another time we can go through the whole process and document and show you exactly how I get this setup, which is very easy. So the point I'm trying to make here, I have it's like once I give this to a member of my team, that person, all he has to do is to change a couple parameters here. Okay. Can you see this? See here, it says end underscore limit. It says 1. You see that? Can somebody tell me yes? No?
Yes.
Okay, good. And so basically this 1 here, that means I am telling Ansible Tower to provision 1 server. If I want to provision 2 servers, 3, 5, 10, I can change it to 10, and I can provision 10 servers on the fly. They're all going to be running in parallel. And here, and this is, I'm saying, for this, the sake of this POC, I don't want to have a large EC2 instance because it costs me money. So I'm just using a very simple set. But when production or on a development, you can come down here and change this from T2 to medium, large, extra large. You can change it to any instance type. Okay. And basically what I'm about to do here, I'm telling it which region it's going to be instance going to be provisioned to, and I'm giving it a subnet and a security group. These basically don't change. The only parameter I'll change is whether I want more than 1 EC2 or what the size, the type. That's it. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this. Let me just cancel because I thought I changed something here. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the job. So we should start counting from here. This is what it says. The provisioning. So right now, and you can see here it says pending. Okay. Actually, now it says running. And here it gives you a quick overview. This is the log. What it's doing behind the scene. So it's launching here, as you can see here, it says launching Windows instance from an EMI. So it's so the job already started. So let me go back to the AWS console and see if the instance has been triggered. I'm gonna go ahead and see right now there's only one running. I'm gonna go refresh and see what happens. You see that? Here we go. You see that says pending. Here's my POC. The instance is started. It took less than 2 minutes. See here, the T2 micro. This is the one. See right now, I have a new EC2 instance. Let me refresh again. I have a new EC2 instance. It's running. It's initializing. It took 2-3 minutes. And that basically this is it sums up the demo. I don't want to take too much. This is basically what I'd like to show you. And if I can go back to my here, it says still running. So this in a minute or so, it should say successful. And let's see, and we should get a fail 0. So let's give it a second here. Let me refresh the So while this is running, I'd just like to show you something quick. This is in terms of security. So if I go here to credentials, this is very important that I like to show you, because somebody can ask me, well, you're running this job, so the code has to be coming from somewhere, right? So the code, it sits on a Git. So I'm actually, it says I have the Git repo. and this is the password. It's encrypted. This is the point that I'm trying to make. Even myself as an admin, I cannot change it. So it says here replace. So this way, once I put it first time, it will get encrypted automatically. So and I don't have the option to change it. So in order for me to change it, I have to replace it. I thought this is a really good way of securing the platform. Okay, so let me go back here, and let's go back to refresh our instance here. It should be initialized, should be done any second. Let's refresh again. There we go. So we have a successful a message, and also sometimes when I check, I see fail equals 0. That means it's successful. So basically, we were able to spin up an EC2 instance. This is Windows. I mean, I can log in to this instance if you like to see it, if you have time. But basically, I have a Windows 2019 up and running as we speak, and the process took 5-6 minutes. So I could have done the same process by logging to the console here, the console here, and I can go, for instance, I'll show you quickly here. If I go to EC2 dashboard and I click launch, but when I do launch, then I have to go through the process. She tells me which EC2 flavor you want to use, Linux flavor, you want to use Red Hat. I mean, Ubuntu, and then I have to go through the wizard, and that the process can take, it doesn't take too long, but the problem is, let's say if I want to provision 4 or 5 or 10 servers, doing that manually through the console, it will take time, and sometimes it's if you miss one step, then you may have to go redo the whole thing all over again. However, with the automation using Ansible or CloudFormation or SSM, you already have a playbook already there. So you know that the security is in place. The VPC, the subnet, the security group, all are in one place. So there is no room for error. It works once, it should work second time. Well, because we tested it, validated, everything looks good. Then from there, all we have to do is just push button. And that's conclude basically my my demo and on my slides. So I will let next gentleman take it from here.
Thank you. Let me get the deck up. Hold on 1 second.
Let me stop sharing. Did anybody have any questions, by the way, before I leave sharing? Anybody has a question?
I think you are good.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing. Okay, thank you.
Jegadesh, can you share yours?
Abdel, that was really good. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I like the way you compared what you can do versus what it used to be.
Yes, sir. Yes, it's a big difference. It makes a big difference.
Oh, it makes it easy to go backwards too, right? You spin it up, it's not quite right. Shut it off, spin up another one.
Yep.
Right, the risk goes down.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Can you guys see my screen?
Perfectly.
Awesome. So looks like there is some kind of technical difficulty. So I'll be kind of quickly covering the security and governance section as well. So let's go through security and governance. So this is, again, one of the key area where the customer always comes back and asks us, is our data on the cloud secure? And do we still have control over managing the data and the security aspects when we move to cloud? So that's one common question. And the second aspect is, am I going to be still in compliance, and am I going to still meet all the regulatory compliance which we are supposed to meet as an organization, right? So that's two major factors that comes in every conversation that we have with our customers. So let's take a quick look at where we are in terms of security and governance and how that kind of plays once you start moving to cloud. So now again, security is in the cloud is going to be a shared responsibility with AWS and yourself, right? So this slide kind of gives you a quick understanding on at what parts AWS comes in and in what aspects the you as a customer still have access to manage the security side of things. In terms of the global infrastructure, so AWS kind of maintains the security on that side. The security is based on region, edge locations, availability
Jegadesh, can I
zones,
interrupt
all
you for a
that.
second? Jegadesh,
Sure.
can I interrupt you for a quick second? Sorry about that, but Jaideep just joined.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, first of all, just a quick to introduce myself. My name is Jaideep Das, and my apologies for joining in and abruptly interrupting Jegadesh's piece of this presentation. Sorry, I was having some audio challenges. So thank you, Jegadesh, if I can take over and I can talk from here.
Sure, let's do that.
Sure. Okay, great. So, as Jegadesh was saying, so at AWS, security is really our job zero, which means as solution architects from AWS and also from our partner companies, we always make sure that customer data, customer privacy, that is dealt with utmost care. And so we have actually developed something called a shared responsibility model, right? And this slide that you're seeing here is really a representation of that shared responsibility, that line that separates, okay, what AWS is going to be responsible for and what the customer is responsible for. So typically, like just you saw how a EC2 instance or a virtual machine was launched. So if you take a look at that, so the compute, the storage, if it was a database that was managed by AWS, in that case, the database, networking in general, all our regions, our edge locations, everything falls under AWS's responsibilities, which means everything that is in our physical data center, in the network layer of AWS Cloud, and also the virtual machines, their patching of the keeping the hypervisors up to date, things of that nature. And then everything on top of that, for example, the operating system, the client-side encryption of the data, even the choices that you make on what type of encryption you're going to use on the server side, that is all the responsibility of the customer, and we provide you with all the tools to do that, and not to mention also your customer content of the data that you put in. So that is the responsibility that is in the cloud, whereas AWS is responsible for the security of the cloud. Okay. So with that, we will go to the next slide, which is a kind of an interactive slide. So why don't we go on to the next slide? Okay, so we are going to, so you'll see that there are some questions that we have out here. It's just a really way to have a fun trivia, if you will, right? So for example, configuring the firewall rules on your virtual machines, right? Would you call that a AWS responsibility or a customer responsibility? And you can answer that question in the poll of this webinar, right? Similarly, what about preventing packet sniffing at a hypervisor level? Do you think that's AWS's responsibility or it's a responsibility of the customer? Patching of operating system, right? And then shredding of the hard disk drives once we have to recycle them out of the data center. So if you like to take a stab at the answers, please feel free to do so.
I've posted the link to this into the Q&A for those that want to take the questions.
Okay.
And then we can, and then Jaideep, you can share the next slide in a bit and show them who's responsible for which.
Yes, sure, we can do that. So if you see, all the questions here are aligned towards that shared responsibility model, right? There is a lot of things that AWS will be providing, and there are some responsibilities that customer has to fulfill. So, so Nancy, can you see responses coming in? Can we switch to the answer slide, or we should give a few seconds more? If you maybe.
I don't see them coming in, but we can go to the next slide and we can just discuss who has the responsibility, and
Okay.
People can match it.
Let's do that. Yes, let's do that. Okay, so there you go. These are kind of the right responses, if you will. So configuring firewalls on the EC2 machines, or patching the operating systems. If you have just now you have built the EC2 instance, making sure that EC2 instance is kept up to date with the right level of patches. Toggling in between what kind of encryption you need on your storages that you're storing files. That is all. Responsibility of the customer, whereas everything that you see in orange, hypervisor management or sharing of disk drives, or securing internal networks inside of AWS's data centers, and of course, managing cameras and everything, that's all AWS's responsibility. Okay, so I hope you have got a good understanding of this shared responsibility model. It depends, it also varies. That line that you saw that segregates between AWS and customer responsibility, that actually may be different for different applications. For example, if you're relying on a managed application, then AWS will take on more responsibilities, than just an EC2's management. Okay, with that, we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, now when we really look at security, right? One of the key elements of security is how do we authenticate and identify users and manage their identity, right? Then there is also how do we manage once we are able to manage? What about auditing, right? So we call it a AAA methodology, if you will, authenticate, and there are means of authentication. We'll talk briefly in the next slide about a service that does that. And then we have identity and access management, which is IAM. That is where we authorize as to which identities are able to do what level of activities. And then after that, all of that has been put in place and they're working, we also need to have a auditing mechanism. So that is our CloudTrail service, where everything can be audited inside of your AWS environment.
Hey, Jaideep, before you move on, sure. The state has a central enterprise Active Directory, and that's what everything ties to. That's the state authentication or identity piece. That's going to move into Azure Active Directory Premium. So, what restrictions does that give to AWS, or what advantages to Azure, or how do those play?
Yeah, so that's definitely it's an advantageous situation that you have a authentication or an Active Directory services that is already in place, that you're already familiar with and you're working with. So AWS can integrate and federate with those services, like you mentioned, Active Directory in Azure. So yes, we can absolutely federate, and that authentication portion of this AAA methodology includes that federation piece. So absolutely, that is supported.
So the Enterprise Active Directory would still be the authority credential for the state.
That is right.
Just federate out to all the services at AWS, just like it would with Azure.
That's right. Yes, that is right.
All right. Thanks for the help. I was confused by that.
Yep. So everything, and then we can go to the next slide. And then everything inside of AWS is really an API call. For example, like you were seeing the demo of how the EC2 instance was created, that was really making API calls to AWS with a EC2 create request with all the necessary data that needs to come in, right? What kind of network, which kind of VPCs, all of that information that comes into that API request. Now, all these API requests that come inside AWS are evaluated by the Identity and Access Management, or IAM service. The IAM service essentially takes a look at the request and looks at who is the principal, that means who is the requester, what is the resource that is being requested for, whether there are any access restrictions on it, and if there are, then what are the conditions for it before it grants access. By default, all requests are set to be denied. So if you just try to create an EC2 instance from a command line, your access will be declined unless your IAM policies have been set up correctly to allow you as a principal to access that particular resource action, right? So, and this is all managed. You can also manage this inside of IAM. End of the day, for programmers, it's very easy to understand for programmers. You can also use the UI to manage this, but there is also a JSON file essentially that you can manage. And some of the examples here are the JSON is like the action, which I was talking about, right? So action could be star, which means all kinds of actions are allowed. It could be that, let's say you're trying to create an EC2 instance, only a create will be allowed, or only a starting or stopping would be allowed. The rest of them will not be allowed. So you can actually go to a very great level of granularity with IAM policies. And then if you see, then let's go to the next slide. Encryption, right? So we talked about how you manage an identity, how we authorize and how we authenticate that user or a service to perform a certain set of actions. But then inside of security, the other aspect is how do we make sure that data is encrypted, right? So encryption really has two aspects of it. One is encryption in transit. That is when data is moving from point A to point B. That's where we would use SSL, TLS, or VPN, IPsec-based encryption, or even secure shell, SSH, right? That's where you're moving data, you're trying to log in or access another service. And then the other important aspect of encryption is when how you're encrypting your data, which is being stored on any of the storage services, like S3, which is our simple storage service, a REST API-based object store service from AWS, or it could be even your file systems of your servers. Like, again, going back to the EC2 example, the storage that was attached to the EC2, you needed to also encrypt that. So there are ways of encrypting that. So we provide multiple ways and multiple methods of encryption at rest, which includes customers can use their own keys, which is to encrypt the data, or they could use which is called the client-side encryption. That means they encrypt the data on their side. That of course requires some heavy lifting on the customer side to encrypt that data. A rather more common approach is to use a server-side encryption. And many of the services like S3 that has got default server-side encryption using AES 256-bit encryption already built in. So all you have to do is check that box. Or you can use a service like key management system, where the master key for encryption is managed by AWS. And this master key also has got options that whether it could be a AWS managed master key, or a customer can provide sometimes for their compliance reasons, their own master key. So it could be a customer managed master key or AWS managed master key. All the rotation and everything happens within AWS for the key to remain compliant. That's another possibility. So we really have a lot of options of making your data encrypted and secure. Any questions, please feel free to put on the on the chat window, and then we can go to the next slide. Okay, now we talked about access, authentication, encryption. The last but not least is, okay, how do I also make sure that my hosts are secure? So there are various ways of doing that. We are just covering one area of that, which is providing host-based protections, like host-based firewalls, network level protections, like network access lists. There are also other services like AWS Network Firewall, or AWS Web Application Firewall, which attaches itself to load balancers and cloud distribution networks. So yeah, there are multiple ways of how network and perimeter security is achieved inside AWS. And we just go, length and breadth to make sure that there are more options that you have for providing that. And so this slide essentially talks about those various methods of protection. By any means, this is not an exhaustive list of services, but there are lots of services around this that provides this level of network perimeter security. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so AWS actually offers multiple forms of compliances. That means we provide with multiple compliance. So here is just a few of them, and you can actually go to the website aws.amazon.com/compliance, and you can see the full list of compliances. You may be aware of this, or maybe you're not aware of this. We have two types of regions inside of AWS ecosystem. One is called commercial regions, where normal workloads run. We also have some highly compliant regions called GovCloud regions. There are two GovClouds in the US, and that's where you have a higher level of compliance that is achieved. Like, for example, ITAR or FedRAMP High or CGIS. So if you have workloads on those that require that level of compliance, then we would ask customers to consider GovCloud. For regular commercial type of compliances or applications, HIPAA and others, a commercial region suffices. Now, these two regions are equally secure, but there is just the only difference is that one is more compliant and one is operated by US persons, whereas the other does not have that restriction. And this is where our architects are going to work with you on selecting. So that's all I had to talk about security. It's a big topic, and I probably tried to just cover just the surface of this. So yeah, any questions that we have for this session? Nancy, on the chat window. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
So I wanted to just jump in a second to speak to I wanted to thank everybody again for attending. I know everybody's busy as can be out there, and taking some time out to learn about this, I think is really important. So thank you. One of the things I wanted to talk about was the state of Washington. As many of you know, I worked with Microsoft for 15 years, and there's an awful lot of Azure and Microsoft 365 around the state. And there's also AWS. So it's not an either or conversation, it's a yes and conversation, depending on what it is you're trying to do. For example, the big One Washington project, the Workday project, Workday runs on top of AWS. And that's going to be the big mothership for the new ERP system across the state. So integrations in and out of that are going to be something to consider. The Healthcare Authority, they run the big statewide Medicaid system. I think that thing puts out $40 billion a biennium. Maybe it's $22 billion. Goes through this system. It's totally built out on AWS, and then you probably get your public employee benefits out of HCA, and they're moving all that public employee, the PEB system, up to AWS, as they have already done for the student employee benefits. Department of Health has a couple new services. They have a master person index across the different health departments, and that's running on a product called Verado that runs on top of AWS. They're also front-ending their COVID response chatbot and telephony environment. They're front-ending that with the AWS Connect platform. because there's supposed to be something like 5,000 to 7,000 calls coming in a day, and they just don't have enough staff to answer all those phone calls. So they're front-ending the calls with AWS Connect with the idea of diverting as many of these calls off as they can. So that's another place. The Department of Health's a big Azure shop, so it's a yes and conversation. And then even DSHS over at Economic Services are starting to use the AWS Connect environment as well for, again, the contact center. And so reaching into the different parts of your department using that front end. So I just wanted to throw out there that AWS is very active at the state of Washington, very different than Office 365 and Microsoft 365. You want to think of that as your software as a service, kind of your desktop suite and all that type of thing. And then the conversation around your application modernization and what's the best breadth of tools available to you to accomplish what you want to get done. That's really the only slide I had. Again, thank you everybody for coming, and I'll relinquish the control of the desktop.
Great. So thanks, Steve. And of course, there's certainly a lot of work to be done in the state of Washington to get the applications modernized and into the cloud, and that all starts with getting that plan going. One of the things that we've been exposed to is Amazon's methodology for doing any kinds of projects. In fact, this methodology called working backwards is something that they implement inside Amazon, and we've gotten exposed to that as Amazon's one of our largest customers, as well as a partner in the Amazon AWS Partner Program. We were the first partner that Amazon AWS worked with to implement their working backwards program into their partner program. So we've got some good experience with it. There's a book on this published now, by the way, that's just really a must-read for anyone interested in 21st century management and leadership in our technology world. And of course, it's available on Amazon and .com. And full disclosure, one of the authors, Bill Carr, is a family friend of mine. He and Colin Breyer are both early day Amazon leaders, and in this book they go through many of the stories of how Amazon developed over the years. So for instance, it gives you great insight into how things like Prime and Kindle came into being, as well as how AWS itself came to be. Really fascinating read. And working backwards starts as a methodology with the customer needs, and brainstorming around those, how to meet them better, right? Discovering solutions and refining them and iterating on them. And then finally, going to implementation and operations and scaling. So this methodology underpins all of our work. That then we start with you on the goals that you want to achieve. For migrations, that is things like improved response times, better availability, reduced risks. It also allows you to modernize and choose the things you want to modernize as you go, as we've talked about in this presentation. And how you can take parts of your application or some of your applications and actually really revamp them to really take advantage of the cloud. Or you can take systems that are kind of at their end of life, but you still need to work with them as core systems and more or less lift and shift those to the cloud. So both of those, those are the things that we do with you to get involved with you using this methodology to identify and create your plans. Here's some of the training resources that are available to you. We're going to be sending this list out to everyone that attended here today. You can go make use of these great capabilities, these great training resources that are out there. It goes maybe a little more in depth into some of the different areas that we touched on today, particularly DevOps and development. All right, we're at the Q&A part, and we've got 10 minutes to roll. So So we will take any questions that you've got or that have come in over the course here, and dive in a little bit. Jegadesh, do you want to lead things off with the Q&A?
And Bob, maybe I can ask this one question before we get rolling. In the Q&A box, is this the right type of presentation for you? Is this a good use of your time? Is this the information you were looking for? And higher or lower level? Like closer to 100, or just get another one out there that's more into the weeds, the 300-400 level?
Yeah, that's certainly a good question, and help us calibrate things as we go forward. And as well, Steve, you know, I know you're going to be following up with everyone here with those training links and with other materials. That might be a good place for you to gather, you know, thoughts on, you know, what they'd like to see next. We can certainly tee up individual conversations where we can get a little more specific around, you know, each agency's needs, and you know, have maybe a little bit easier access to some of the experts. We could bring the same panel back together, you know, working on your particular individual situations, and of course, you know, tease out a lot more questions and so forth in doing so.
If you don't,
anything you wanted to touch on?
No, I think we are good, Bob. The only point that I wanted to kind of add towards the end is a journey to cloud. A lot of companies, they have already started, and they have either done assessment or on the strategy side, or they have certain workloads on the cloud. One thing that I would highly recommend is, as a takeaway of this meeting, so you can probably go back, look at where you are in terms of journey to cloud, and see what are some of those areas or a low-hanging fruit where you can quickly move certain things to cloud and start embracing cloud. So that's something which I would really recommend. One of the key takeaways that at least we see from other customers is they try to see, okay, we need to move to cloud. Can we at least do the backup and recovery on the cloud? So I know backup and recovery is pretty critical. And with a lot of security incidents these days, people are moving towards at least backing up things to cloud and keeping things on the cloud. So that could be one easy win that you could do on migration to cloud or journey to cloud. And the second would be to understanding more on the strategy-based approach, where you come up with a full strategy on migrating your applications to cloud. It could be just a lift and shift or re-platform. It could be anything based on your business needs and strategy. But I think cloud has a place for every organization and every department. So you can probably really look at what are those low-hanging fruits for you to really start testing the waters by moving a low-hanging fruit to the cloud. So that would be my recommendation or suggestion or key takeaway from this event.
Very good. Yeah. I totally agree. Well, we've got 5 minutes left, but you know what? I think what we'll do is wrap up here and give everybody 5 more minutes to take a quick breath and get ready for their next meeting at the top of the hour. We want to thank everybody for joining us here today. Thank you, AWS, Steve and Jaideep, for joining with us to put this on. Look forward to working with you folks in the future.
Thank you, Bob.
Everyone.
Great partnership. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye.
thank you, everyone.
Excellent. Thank you. Bye.